What is going on, guys? Welcome to Sixers post-game live. Today, we are breaking down the Sixers 103 to 88 loss here to the Toronto Raptors. We're breaking it all down. I've got my man Tiago, my man Sean. I don't even know where to begin with this loss here. The Sixers, an utterly disgraceful performance. Every single player on that roster should be hanging their heads in fucking shame tonight, especially James Harden. 15 points in utterly probably the biggest Sixers game of his career. Absolutely horrendous performance. Our fears about Nick Nurse getting outcoached or outcoaching Doc Rivers are coming true at legit the worst possible time. This was probably one of the best Doc Rivers masterpieces where he sees guys missing open three after open three and does not run a single play, easy bucket at the rim that starts to let the rim open up, man. Just top to bottom failures. Tiago, lead us off, man.
Yeah, Chris, Doc Rivers saw the number 3-1 and said it's Doc Rivers time. So we've all been here. We have seen this movie before, and we're living the dream right now, man, or the nightmare, as you probably want to put it. It was a horrendous Doc Rivers game. It was an embarrassing performance all around, particularly from their two stars. So we got to call out Harden. We also got to call out Embiid, man, because some of the stuff that I saw had nothing to do with the finger. It had absolutely nothing to do with the finger. So it was not a good performance, like you said.
Muted.
What about you, Sean?
Just about as disappointing of a performance as it could have been. All around, just a disappointing effort that didn't show up whatsoever on either side of the ball. Offensively, there was issues. Defensively, there was issues, and there really are just no positives from that. So I'm super just frustrated with the effort. It feels like the team continues to lack urgency, especially with tonight, and I really don't have it. There's pretty much negatives for every single category you look in.
Yeah, let's start off with the biggest one, and that is Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid finished this game with what? He had 20 points. He had 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 turnovers. Let me just share his shot chart really quick here. But it was really bad, especially defensively. This is arguably probably his worst defensive game against the Raptors this series. A lot of red there. A lot of red. When you have 8 attempts in the paint and 7 on the perimeter, where does this go, Tiago? Where does this is the thumb bothering him? Is this more the Doc Rivers just ISO James Harden offense? Because at one point, Joel Embiid had a bucket in rhythm from a pass from James Harden, at the rim. I think late in the third quarter, they're just the Toronto Raptors are just suffocating Joel Embiid on the perimeter right now.
Yeah, I mean, they have flat out sold out on Joel Embiid. They could care less about whoever else on the court. It doesn't matter if Harden's out there or if Tyball's out there. They're going to double. They're going to triple team Joel Embiid. They're going to make sure that he doesn't get a single shot off. And when he does, it's quadruple tested. I thought that his decision-making was poor and slow. I thought that his ability to read double teams was really bad. The Sixers don't run a lot of stuff when Joel Embiid is on the court, so we all talked about this. Everybody kind of stands around and watches the offense. And when a defense like Toronto is so aggressively doubling you, triple teaming you, I don't understand why guys aren't cutting flash to the rim. I mean, you see Thybulle do that on occasion, but other than that, it's a lot of standing around, so it doesn't really help his cause. But really, what I want to talk about Joel Embiid is just the defensive effort was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. You can't have that from your leader. It was flat out embarrassing. And Joel Embiid has had playoff conquerors in the past before. They most come offensively where he's had poor performances, but I thought that this was probably one of his worst defensive games as a Sixers, period. And for a team that's trying to shut down the door here, that's not the way to set an example. And I thought that it permeated down the entire roster. So I was very disappointed by the way they play. And hey, listen, if the fingers playing is going to be that much of an issue defensively, then maybe he should take a seat. I don't know. I didn't see that to be the case, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's kind of the next question. Should Joel Embiid have sat out this game to rest? Sean, real quick thoughts on Embiid's performance tonight.
Yeah, I agree with everything Tiago said there. I feel like the Raptors' full effect of their defense kind of kicked in this game even more so than the previous game, just in terms of mucking things up, not letting any pressure to the basket get. Maxi really struggled with that. They did a very good job of defending the perimeter on that and not letting him get to his lanes. And Embiid, it was the same way. And just as Tiago said, defensively, by far the biggest concerns. I mean, defense is never really an area that we're circled as a concern with Embiid, and I don't know if it is the hand, if it is the effort, or just the energy, but he has to be willing to go up and block shots, to cause issues eventually, and he was just getting picked on in ways that we usually do not see with him, and the Sixers are not going to be able to win if that is the case. If they want to keep defense as a sort of identity for this team, that starts with Joel. He plays a major role in that, and it didn't happen tonight.
Steven says 4 air balls with clean looks. This had to break the Sixers record this season for air balls. Like, they were just coming like every quarter.
Chris,
it was insane.
Did you see the air ball layup by Thibault?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to Thibault in a little bit. Quentin says, welcome to 2022 postseason playoff Doc. It's not playoff Sixers basketball until Doc is being Doc, and Joel Embiid injuries, man. It just kills you. Steven says, even when they had some nice baskets, you had the equivalent of 2 wide receivers running the same route. I agree with that, man. There's just no ball movement whatsoever. This offense is just stale. Absolutely stale. SGT Best says 3-0 blown lead. Yep, that's where we're going. This is going 7 for sure. Steven says, I want to believe they're keeping the NBA TV revenue stream alive. Yo got cooked 100%, especially defensively, like Tiago said. Steven says, we got clean looks. We didn't hit open threes, just like game 4. But Maxi, we are walling Maxi too much and letting Green, Thibault, Harris beat them. Even the cuts to Thibault had late passes. Yep. But I want to talk about defense, because this was like my fear this entire series, and it's finally coming true with you saw Fred VanVleet be out in this one. In game 4, they kind of got a little that more Toronto Raptors basketball there in game 4 when VanVleet was off the court. And we saw it here in game 5. This is chaos. When Toronto Raptors are just causing chaos and the Sixers are turning over the ball and the Raptors are getting whatever they freaking want at the rim. Are you a little concerned about this Sixers defense, Tiago?
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to turn the ball over at the rate that they've done in the last couple of games, they're going to lose the series. And it's something we talked about even before the series started, is that they couldn't get caught in that game. And they did a very good job in the first 2.5 games. And all of a sudden, the wheels fall off. So, yes, if they're going to keep turning the ball over that way, they're going to lose. Where I'm really concerned is just overall their scheme. I mean, I don't know what they see in Toronto's half-court offense that leads them to think they should be hard hedging out on the perimeter on guys who are below average three-point shooters. And yet they continue to get out there and just take these wild closeouts, which is creating all types of easy offense at the rim for Toronto, or wide open shots. So it goes back to what we talked about early in the year. The Sixers don't seem to have a very coherent defensive scheme. They don't seem to do very precise scouting on players. They just kind of throw the same blanket scheme out there, and Toronto's taking advantage of it, man. They get a lot of looks at the rim. We talked about Joel's effort. I thought Harden's defensive effort, man, was something, man. It was something tonight. Maybe Sean can add to that as well. But I am concerned.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback onto what you're saying, when you look at this Toronto team, like, they have such a clear identity with what they're doing. They have their length, they have their athleticism, they have their play style, they have their edge to them. When you compare that to this Sixers team, it's like I never see quite like the direction the team is heading in terms of, like, they can do some things well. We run the pick and roll well with Harden. We have some moments with Maxi in the fast break. They have their sets for Danny Green to set up corner threes for Tobias, but there isn't like a set like, this is our thing as a team and this is our identity that we stand on offensively or defensively. And that's a major concern the deeper we get into the playoffs. Like, to some extent, there has to be that like calling card of a team, and I just feel like this Sixers roster lacks that.
And just one more point on that, because I think it's really important. if you understand the gap in energy level and intensity, watch how Toronto attacks closeouts and their discipline, and then watch how the Sixers attack the closeout to the discipline. It's like two different sports are being played today. So if you're going to be playing at that level, man, it's not good. Not good.
And then you go offensively. Like, I don't think the Raptors did that much that was so great in this one to get the W. Like, they shot 8 of 31 from 3. Like, they just beat the Sixers to death on just effort. And the Sixers just didn't have it tonight. They looked flat. Joel Embiid still looked like he was coasting. And that leads us to the next guy. And we've been talking about it, especially in Game 4. But James Harden looked 2 steps behind this one. Arguably his worst Sixers game, I think. 15 points in this one. James Harden had, if I can find it, he had 5 turnovers, 7 assists. He shot 4 of 11 from 3. It was a -10. I don't know if it's James Harden or Doc running this offense, but the ISO basketball of James Harden, like, how many times do we have to beat our head against the wall to say this isn't working? Lead us off, Sean.
Yeah, to me, I think Harden, I even give more responsibility of the blame than I do for Embiid today, which obviously everyone's guilty today. But for Harden specifically, like, this was one of those matchups where it's looked at to me as like, you need to step up. It's time for you to find your role, find a way to be productive. And he just does not have it. Like, it's kind of tough. It feels like we're getting to the point where we're asking him to give something that he just simply doesn't have and simply can't provide. But that's a major concern if he doesn't, because that's what the whole idea of bringing him here was. And we know there's that like section of shots that has been missing in the Sixers offense for all year, especially with the Simmons stuff before. That's Harden's role. That section of shots is for him to get his production on, and he just hasn't. I mean, he lacks the aggression to seek out what we need him to, and the production just flat out isn't there.
Yeah. 1 of 4 inside the paint for James Harden today. Tiago, what's your concern level about James?
I mean, he's missing wide open shots too, which it's a concern. James Harden was never a off the ball player ever in his career. So to expect him to all of a sudden not be an ISO player with the Sixers is, in my opinion, like a little bit like not realistic, because that's just not the player that he is. So for him to own up the isolation possessions with the Sixers, you definitely want more output from that. Absolutely, 100%. That being said, I thought that the way they have some of these lineups around Harden, especially with the second unit, makes it harder for him to score. I mean, there was a possession around the second quarter after he came back where they had it spaced out, and all of a sudden Shake Milton flashes in front of him. And I'm like, man, like, you just spaced the court for him and let him do his thing. So there are things within the Sixers scheme that also does not help them, but ultimately, man, it's just not going to work if you're not going to own up your scoring. I mean, you're basically playing like Ben Simmons without an ounce of defense that Ben Simmons brought to the table. So that's a big problem right now offensively. So.
Yeah. And that leads us into our next segment, which is Tyrus Maxi. I mean, that was everything we learned from Game 4 was that we have to unleash Tyrus Maxi, get him more involved on offense. Just 12 points in 41 plus minutes, 5 of 14 from the floor. It was a tough game for Tyrese Maxey, second-year player. It happens. But there was a point in this game where Thibault had more shots than Tyrese Maxey. That is inexcusable. They finally started going to it third quarter, fourth quarter. But why abandon that in the first and second quarter? That's more on Doc again. But Tyrese Maxey was basically nothing in this game. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, you kind of hit it with that. He just he continues to be too passive in this offense. And when you look at like the setup of the trio the Sixers have with Harden, Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey, like Maxey's the guy that needs to provide the scoring pop if Harden's not. And it's difficult because I feel like to some extent we're throwing stuff on Maxey's plate that was kind of expected to be Harden's. But regardless, the production is not there from either one. And there has to be the consistent threat from the guards to find some sort of scoring pop. And Maxey, at this stage in each of their careers, obviously has more in that category. So obviously he wasn't getting his shots today, 5 of 14. it's just so frustrating because it feels like he should be able to provide so much. I also think Toronto deserve some credit for making some adjustments. He was not able to kind of get his usual lanes to the basket off the pump fakes and getting guys to close out and blow by. So they did a good job bottling him up, but there just has to be more still. And I would rather him like go down seeking out his shot. He's a guy that it feels like when he starts to not feel it, he just gets more and more passive. And I would really like for that to change.
It's a hard ask, right? That's such a tough thing to ask for a 21-year-old man.
I will say this. I thought that the Sixers kind of lost the game to start the second quarter. And if you guys recall the lineup they had out there, so they had Harden and Embiid on the bench. And that was Maxi's opportunity to shine. And I thought he fell flat on his face, man. That was a horrendous run by the Sixers. He was a minus 19 or minus 15 to end the first half. A lot of it had to do with that second unit run. The Sixers didn't score a point in the second quarter until they got Harden and Embiid back in the game. So I thought it was a terrible decision by Doc to get that lineup out there. And Maxi just didn't deliver in that space. So, I mean, you see Doc trying to give him a little more responsibility, and he's got to own up to that, man, if he wants to step up. So we'll see. I mean, he's going to get more chances for sure, but it wasn't a good Maxi game either.
Well, what we saw in like games 1, 2, and 3 was Maxi's transition game really stand out. He was a one-man transition bucket, rebound the ball, push the pace, go down the other side. I know that's a lot more difficult now with, Scotty Barnes playing more time and no Fred VanVleet and all that kind of stuff. But like, we haven't seen any of that the last 2 games, right?
That's the key point, Chris. Like, no Fred VanVleet. Toronto becomes less exploitable when he's not out there. It's harder to get buckets. So in a way, they're better off without him on the court. And the Sixers are finding out, especially Maxi, because Maxi destroyed Fred VanVleet to begin the series.
It really is scary, all the length and just athleticism they have. Like, just looking through that lane, it's hard to see at times. And Maxi, I think more so than we realized, was impacted by that, because as great as his pace is and as separating as that can be in like a one-on-one situation with a lot of these guys, the sheer amount of bodies and just limbs that they get in the way is just tough to deal with.
Yeah. Let's get some comments real quick here. Quinn says Sixers don't know what they're doing offensively or defensively. They are not well coached. Steven says run a pick to get Maxi free. If Harden doesn't draw a triple team, nothing good happened. It was unbelievable. This is why we needed to sweep to get Harden another week off. He looked horrible. Quinn says you can't do a simple pick and roll versus Toronto. You need 3-4 man actions. Steven says, let's face it, we're a 51-31 team for a reason. We had stretches like this during the year. Hopefully we hit our open looks. Simple pick and roll is not going to work. Toronto will just switch it to death. I agree with that completely. And then we get to a guy who hasn't played a single minute the last 2 games.
Chris is going to go off. Come on.
And this is a guy that I was actually looking forward to seeing, like, what impact he could have, because you look at the Sixers, like they're flat. They're playing flat. You want to see a guy on the Sixers kind of meet chaos, and that could be Matisse Thybulle. And my goodness, that had to be his worst Sixers game in his career by far. Matisse Thybulle finished this game. He did have a couple of nice defensive possessions on Siakam in this one, but 2 points in 14 minutes, 1 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 3 from three-point range. He had 1 steal and a turnover and 3 personal fouls. Where do we go from here? Because, I mean, Thybulle was basically unplayable. Yeah. He was literally unplayable, Sean.
Yeah, it's kind of a pick your poison that we're looking at right now. Niang is getting exposed defensively. Thybulle brings absolutely zero and is a detriment offensively. To speak on Thybulle specifically, I mean, that was just a disaster class of a game. I don't think I've seen
disaster class. I love that.
Yeah, that was.
I really don't think I've seen like that elementary of an offensive performance at the NBA level and like ever. It really is insane that like. In some respects, it's a testament to his defense that he's able to have gotten to this level for some of the stuff, but it was just brutal today. And you can see just how unconfident he looks shooting the ball. He does his best trying to make cuts and impact, but it's just not there. And frankly, my leash with Thibault is getting extremely short in terms of like I don't think there's a lot of hope that it ever gets to the point where he can be more effective than he is already offensively. But for looking at this series specifically, I don't see how you can play him against this Raptors team, especially without Fred VanVleet there. I really don't think that you can even get him in the rotation because it's just that much of a detriment with him on the court.
Thiago.
He made Ben Simmons' performance last year look like Kevin Durant.
Oh my god!
It was bad, man. It was really bad. We all know we're gonna go from here. The Sixers are going to Toronto, and Matisse gonna be vlogging his next episode on YouTube. He can't jump on a damn plane to Canada because he's gotta make his point about vaccines. Listen, man. I think Matisse is a phenomenal defensive player. I think he brings a lot to the team defensively. I think he's a key part of this team because he was able to do it defensively, create turnovers, disrupt the flow of the defense. But man, dribbling the basketball, it's gotta be a prerequisite in basketball, man. You gotta know how to dribble a basketball. And you gotta be able to make a layup in basketball. And you gotta be able to hit the rim when you shoot the ball. I mean, those are basic prerequisites of a basketball player. If you can't do those things, man, it makes it hard to play basketball. So you'd like to see at least some improvements in those areas because he's such a impactful defensive player. And again, we're not even asking Thibault to be a 25-point per game player. That is not who he is. Just cash in on what's around you, man, and you'll be fine. But he's never been able to own that. So
yeah. It's tough because I feel like we're asking him like such a simple thing to do. Like it's like we're not asking you to go out and create your own shot or do all these things.
Right.
Like just space the floor, be confident enough to hit a jumper, cut when the moment's right. And it's just like even then the shot and the basic basketball offensive skills are just not quite good enough to cut it.
So bad, man. They're like Toronto just left them alone. Like they're just like, later, buddy. We'll just see you when the shot hits the rim. That's basically Toronto's response. Disaster class might be my favorite new term of the post-game show here. We might be saying that a lot, especially in Game 6. Steven says JoJo was completely ornery in the first two games. He needs to get back to that. I'm not sure what that word means. Steven says Ben passes the torch to Thibault. We didn't just know it at the time. Oh, my God. Thibault made Rocco look like a LeBron fish. There was some Rocco flashbacks in this one. Like, Thibault just couldn't – everything Thibault was doing was just it was failing every single time. And the fans were booing him like crazy. And that's the other kind of thing I want to talk about tonight, which I thought the fans were absolutely horrendous. I thought the Sixers fans were absolutely garbage in this one. From the jump, you could tell, like, they were quiet. They were, like, waiting and waiting. They were not in this game whatsoever. They were more complaining about the fouls rather than cheering this team on. I thought the Sixers fans at this game, I don't know if they're, like, rich snobs buying these tickets, but do not come back. Do not come back. You're not allowed for Game 7 because we know this is probably happening. But I thought the Sixers fans were absolutely awful. Like, you couldn't hear them. I couldn't hear them.
There was one moment in the fourth where they kind of came alive and were trying to will the team, and it was one of those, like, these guys have more hope than I do right now because of that. But for the general consensus, I agree.
The beer kicked in, and everyone's like, hey, here's the thing, man. Those tickets are like $200, like you said, Chris. I'm sure the people that go to these games are not even real fans. And I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, in Toronto. Yeah, in Toronto, those fans are going to bring it, man. They're absolutely going to bring it.
Like, it's night and day. Night and day. You watch Game 4, you watch Game 5. Night and day. You can't even compare it.
And just one more thing. Like, the complaining about the fouls. I know that's a staple of Doc Rivers. It's always been every Doc Rivers team that he's ever had has complained about fouls to the point of, like, being unwatchable. But you got to win a series, man. And at some point, you got to deliver on the scoreboard. And I think the Sixers are pinning too much hope on fouls, on calls. Just go out there, win the game, and worry about the officiating later. And I think that's a lot to ask about Doc Rivers because that's who he is. But if you drop this series, man, that is an all-timer off last year's collapse.
First ever.
God. That is an all-timer right there. So.
That was 100% my response with like Siakam's push-offs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe if the Sixers hit a bucket once every 4 minutes, maybe we'll be in the game rather than complaining about silly push-offs. I wasn't having any of that. Same for Game 4. It's the Sixers' lack of offense, lack of defense that has been killing this team. Not the fouls.
Yeah.
Not the fouls. Steven says fans were awful tonight, just like Game 5 and 7 last year. Steven says it's all in their head, and Quinn says Doc is getting fired. All right, player of the game, Sean.
It's tough. I don't even have a saying. I guess I'm giving it to Toby. That's going to be my standard game. Toby was okay. Shot 7 threes, which I really like. Had a couple moments where he drove, but really not a lot of positive signs here.
Tiago?
If you take away his 3 air balls, I'm going to give it to him. He did have, I think, 2 or 3 air balls tonight.
At least. And one of them, I think, was in the fourth quarter. Like, it was, like, not even close.
But he was pretty good, I thought. He was very good offensively. He was one of the few guys that actually cuts off the ball, moves around. He's very confident, played pretty well defensively, so I'll give it to him.
There was a time when the offense was so bad that we were relying on Danny Green to hit shots. Like, the offense is really bad when, you need Danny Green. Like, we're relying on Danny Green to make buckets. And that's how bad this got.
He went from back-to-back makes to one of the ugliest, trailer threes that I've seen all year.
He missed the rim by, 6 feet on that shot.
Yeah, the full Danny Green experience.
The Raptors had a lot of air balls, too. Like, that's where I'm just, so frustrated. Like, Game 4, a baseline average Sixers offensive performance probably gets them the W. Probably here too in Game 5. Like, that's how bad this Sixers offense was. Quentin says player of the game was whomever removed Ben Simmons and his loud outfits from the Nets bench.
Yeah, we can't even enjoy the Nets sweep. We can't even.
No, not right now.
I
got nothing.
That matchup with Boston, if they get there, man, I am not looking forward to that. I know we still got to go a long way, but
yeah, I'm back to. I guess I was at the look ahead a little bit to Miami. What are we looking at? I'm back to worried about this series again. They need to find a way to win. Like we've all said, this would be the biggest collapse in basically NBA history. So they just need to find a way to pick up the competitiveness, find an edge within them, and just get back to consistent effort, which should not be what we have to ask for in the playoffs, but that's what this team is bringing out of us.
You know what's the worst part about this loss? Is now Game 6 will be during the NFL draft.
Oh, it's Thursday.
Yeah.
It's not Wednesday, it's Thursday.
Yeah, the draft is Thursday.
And the game is Thursday, too, so they don't play on Wednesday.
Right. Yeah, both are on at the same time.
Well, Howie Roseman would trade the pick, Chris, so you don't have to worry.
It's a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster. I don't know how I'm going to manage that. I'm going to be like Batman. I'm going to have 4 screens going on at the same time. I guess if there's one silver lining is that Sixers fans don't have to deal with Ben Simmons anymore. Right? What a disaster that was. I don't want to touch on that anymore. But
no, man, they can use Ben Simmons' defense tonight. I'll tell you that.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Plugs. Sean, go ahead, man.
All right. Disappointing game tonight, I guess. But tune into my Twitter at Sean_Bernard1 to follow me some positive Sixers outlooks. You can also check out all my written work on Philly Sports Network and Clutch Points, and check out the Pick Swap Pod as well.
All right, Pick Swap Podcast, Philly Sports Network. The man does so much. What about you, Tiago?
Chris, I started to write an article called "Why Doc Rivers Had a Great Series Against the Raptors," and I'm gonna have to. I have about 150 words, and I'm going to delete every single one of them tonight. So that article is going down the tubes.
Just like the Sixers offense, man. Just like the Sixers series. Yeah, just amazing how – I mean, we all saw it coming, like how Toronto adjusts. But, Toronto's not playing well. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into this more tomorrow morning. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Follow my man Tiago on Twitter at Tiago PHL. He is Sean at Sean_Bernard1. Check out the Pick Swap podcast. Covers everything Sixers basketball and everything he does at Philly Sports Network. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay awesome, everyone.